Hi, I'm Ines Carter, Director of Social Impact Studios in Philadelphia, and curator and author of Posters for the People, Art of the WPA. Welcome to this online field trip of the Vida Americana Mexican Muralist exhibit at the Whitney Museum of Art in New York City. I put this field trip together because I thought it would be a nice way to experience this astounding period of art together in community during a pretty isolated and challenging time. I'm not a representative of the Whitney or an expert on this subject, but I am an expert on WPA posters, and they were also very heavily influenced by these Mexican muralists. And I also have been in mural projects myself. Social Impact Studios and Eric Oakday created the How We Fish mural with the Mural Arts program here in Philadelphia in 2011. But bottom line, I love this period in American art, and I'm excited to share it with you. When I was 16, I was an exchange student in Mexico City, so I got to see these murals firsthand, and I'm pretty sure that they changed the way I understand art, what's public, and how you can be transformed in an instant when you experience beauty that really speaks to you personally. We were really lucky to have Roger Van Oosten join us from Seattle during this field trip. He's a WPA historian in his own right, a mural specialist, and worked with the team that put this exhibit together to procure some pieces for the exhibit. You'll hear him talking during the New Deal section. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great time. So, welcome to our field trip. This is an exhibit that was supposed to open in May up at the Whitney in New York City called Vida Americana, Mexican Muralists Remake American Art from 1925 to 1945. So what I want to do first is jump us right into a video, a 6-minute video that gives us a frame for this exhibit.
José Clemente Orozco, Diego Rivera, David Alfaro Siqueiros, the Mexican muralists known as Los Tres Grandes. They created monumental visions of struggle and heroic triumph, oppression and popular power. But there's another side to these artists, an untold story of cross-cultural exchange that would alter the course of American art forever. In the 1920s, a profound change swept across Mexican society. A 10-year civil war had finally drawn to a close. The new government enacted progressive social reforms that empowered workers and farmers, but this transformative project wasn't so simple.
There was no shared culture, no sense of a Mexican national identity.
People were fed up with others telling them what their identity was.
The government turned to the arts. They commissioned grand public murals depicting the history and everyday life of the nation's people. Los Tres Grandes rose to the task.
They were radical, they were revolutionaries at their time, and they showed ideas that hadn't been seen before. These depictions were represented at a monumental size, and so people were able to see themselves represented in these works.
The heart of what we're doing belongs with people, and we want real people to be engaged with real ideas.
Artists including the Mexican painter Frida Kahlo, the Italian photographer Tina Modotti, and the Soviet filmmaker Sergei Eisenstein joined the vibrant avant-garde scene emerging in Mexico. But it was the epic art of the muralists that captured the Americans' imagination.
They'd never seen anything like that. They began to flood U.S. journals about what was called the Mexican Renaissance. So it brought down to Mexico a huge number of American artists.
As political power shifted, mural commissions declined, and Los Tres Grandes looked north to the United States.
The period when the Mexican muralists came to the U.S., the country was going through the Great Depression.
So the Mexican artists came, and they really provided a sense of encouragement to artists that were grappling with the Depression, and really provided a vision for an art that would be connected to society and that would have a social role.
José Clemente Orozco was the first to come to the United States. His mural for Pomona College in California depicting the mythical Greek titan Prometheus caused a sensation.
The quality of the work and the strength of the expression was something that really hadn't been seen in America.
Someone who really appreciated and thought the world of his work was Jackson Pollock. Pollock went to Pomona College. I call it kind of a pilgrimage to see Orozco's mural.
And Pollock was overwhelmed. He said it was the best painting in the contemporary world. And he kept an image of it in his studio throughout the 1930s.
Jacob Lawrence was also influenced by Orozco, whom he met while working on his Migration series. He admired the muralists' commitment to public art that engaged with social and political issues.
When I look at the Migration series, it is a call to action. And it asks me to ask myself, what am I creating that is monumental in scope, that has the power to change through time?
Diego Rivera was the second of Los Tres Grandes to arrive in the U.S.
He's considered at that point the hero of the Western world. He embodies the spirit of the Mexican Revolution.
Inspired by his experiences in the U.S., Rivera gave expression to a new vision of modern American industry in a mural at the Detroit Institute of Arts.
His idea about creating a national epic was something that was very influential on American artists.
I think he understood politically the power of representation, that even if it wasn't happening in society actually, that it was an aspirational possibility.
Siqueiros was the last to arrive in the U.S. He was a radical in every way.
What was most important was to produce not only revolutionary art in terms of content, but also in terms of materials. How the material was what contained the revolutionary potential as well, like the techniques and the methods that you employed.
Siqueiros quickly learned that his politics didn't always go over well with his American patrons. His second U.S. commission, Tropical America, overlooked the touristic Olvera Street in downtown Los Angeles.
They wanted something kind of tropical, almost like Brazil, something exotic. And being Siqueiros, he said, I'm not gonna give that to them. So he decided to paint a really shocking image of an indigenous figure being hung as a way of representing the ideals of anti-imperialism.
Shortly after its unveiling, Tropical America was partly whitewashed. 2 years later, it was completely painted over. In 1936, Siqueiros set up his experimental workshop in New York City. Jackson Pollock was one of the attendees.
They would put canvas on the floor and throw paint, splatter it, put things on the canvas. That experience that he had of being free of all conventions really became the hallmark of Pollock's mature style.
By the 1940s, Los Tres Grandes had moved back to Mexico and continued creating their monumental murals and works of art. But the impact continued to reverberate through the work of the many artists whose lives they touched over the years.
This exhibition is really rewriting art history.
It's a testament to the huge amount of bonds that exist between the two countries.
The point of consideration for us as individuals, as artists, as a society, when we enter a show like this, in this political moment, is exactly what we want from art.
Okay, was everybody able to hear that okay? Great. All right. Thank you very much for helping Armchair be my co-pilot, like Chewbacca. Okay, so let's dive into the actual exhibit itself. The website is great, and we're going to use the website's organization, the curation of this website, as a way to actually look at the work and talk about the work. But I'm just going to walk us through the parts that are organized here in this website. So there's several audio tours that I think go with the physical exhibit. So we're going to try to mimic that as much as possible. So I'm going to start this recording, and then we're going to look through the catalog, the exhibit catalog, because that's where we can really see the images that are being discussed in this introduction. Okay, here we go.
Welcome to Vida Americana, Mexican Muralists Remake American Art, 1925 to 1945. This show features approximately 200 works by Mexican and American artists, including a number of reproductions of important mural projects in the US and Mexico. Together, these works will demonstrate the tremendous impact Mexican artists had on the development of art in the United States. The Mexican painter's clear, accessible approach gave U.S. artists a direct new visual language. It allowed them to address new technologies in productivity, economic disparities in labor rights, racialized violence, and the rise of fascism in the 30s. Starting to your right, take a moment to explore the first spaces of the exhibition. Here, you'll see the kinds of themes and approaches that artists in the United States found so exciting. Much of the imagery in this first group of works, which echoed the murals Mexican artists had painted back home, is picturesque. You'll find flowers, traditional dancers, and women and children in folkloric dress. Such subjects were very prominent after the Mexican Revolution, a bloody conflict that lasted from 1910 to 1920. One of the main goals of the revolution had been to achieve land reform, ending the oppression of an immense rural population by a few wealthy landowners. After the war was over, the new Mexican government began commissioning public murals. The artists frequently portrayed the campesinos, farm workers and their families, as the heroes of the revolution. These public works of art glorify the nation's deep indigenous roots, showing a continuum between modern rural life and ancient cultures, including the Aztec, Maya, Olmec, and Zapotec. From a contemporary perspective, a number of these depictions verge on stereotype. Some also present an image that seems excessively romantic, given the poverty that plagued the countryside even after the revolution. However, the artists intended for their works to declare solidarity with the campesinos. Those intentions were imperfectly realized, but they helped initiate a movement towards activist art meant to communicate directly with the broader public, to address difficult and even painful subjects, and to spark political and social change.